Greetings, adventurers, travelers, and fellow keepers of the lake. Welcome to the video about KULT. Well, I said I won't be doing this video because it's a controversial topic, but I think it is a very exceptional game with exceptionally bad marketing, and I want to try and talk to you about who this game is for, what its deal is, and maybe transfer some of the vibe of the game onto you so that you know if it's something that you and your players would play. And I want to mention some of the cool concepts that this game brings to the table. And also you can use a bunch of these in other tabletop games. You don't have to play KULT, but stay tuned, there is some cool stuff here. Hey, you. If you've just stumbled across this channel and you have no idea where you are, welcome to the Barlow Keep, where we are the keepers of the Lake of Creative Thinking. Currently, we are talking mostly about tabletop RPGs and storytelling stuff, because I'm obsessed with that right now, but you can expect a bunch of different things across the board tied to creative stuff. So if you want to see this hairy dude ramble about things that he's interested in right now,
become another keeper of the lake. The Barlow Keep.
A little disclaimer, this video contains a review of the horror role-playing game KULT, which is known for its exploration of sensitive and graphic themes. Viewer discretion is advised, as some content may not be suitable for all audiences. This review is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not intend to harm or disrespect any views or sentiments. Please continue watching at your own discretion. With that out of the way, I want to jump straight into the controversies. So you've probably come across this game, as I did, by seeing it played by some other YouTuber and advertising it as a very edgy game, like something that's going into a very deep and dark places and something that's on the borderline of acceptable to bring out to your friends and play with them. And hear me out, this is why I say it is an exceptional game with exceptionally bad marketing, because yeah, this is kind of true, but that is the problem. There are controversies related to its topics. The last scenario I've played is Downfall, and I think it's from Sounds of Screams and Whispers, something like that is the name of the book. It's a very perversive, sexualized story. It was uncomfortable in places. It really prepping that stuff really got me into a bad place in my mind, but it was still the least touching and least disturbing of all that were in that book. So this is a game that has deeper potential, and stay tuned, I will explain why I think this. But from the surface level, you're just seeing blood, gore, horrible dark topics. Well, we are talking about sick children, abuse, we are talking about some sexualized content, and a lot of things that I cannot even say or mention on YouTube, because even with the disclaimer, it's still too much for YouTube. I mean, everything is too much for YouTube, but sometimes these types of things can really be too much for the people at the table as well. And just to get this out of the way, I'm okay with dark. I just think this is done not for the sake of being dark, but for the sake of shock value. I don't think most of these adventures have some form of a satisfying ending. They leave you with a sour taste in your mouth. And yeah, if you see the premise and you start playing it, eventually you will hit a wall where you say, okay, is it cool that we adults have sat around this table to play something that will make us feel miserable? And yeah, in this video I am gonna talk about on how to make this more meaningful. Then you have the religious symbols, and I know that there is certain religions that use these types of symbols, use this type of hierarchies and everything. And there is another thing that I think wasn't necessary, but was probably done in the first version of the book, so now we are continuing with that fashion. And I see where the inspiration comes from. I've went and watched a bunch of videos, I will put them in the description, that explain the origins of these things in, for example, Judaism, Christianity, and some older religions. It is all tied together, and it kind of makes sense why it is the way it is, but you could have just reskinned it so you don't trigger people. Anyways, if religious symbols from your religion in this dark and gruesome context is something that is bothering you, then I can certainly say that KULT is not for you, because this is the least of your worries when you open the KULT book. People are talking that in the 80s or whatever there was the satanic panic, and this is just confirming it. You're taking literal religious symbols and scrutinizing them, which I don't care about, but I know there are people that care about it. example one-shots, for example, the Oakwood Heights is a very nice adventure to get you going, and I think it's the best one you will find in terms of one-shots. I haven't played longer campaigns, but I think these one-shots are what is creating the stigma and what is creating the misconceptions, and I think they are missing on some crucial parts of the game. Deeper down, there is a much more beautiful game that they're selling, and they're just not like marketing it as so. And all of these things steer people away from this game. They buy it, they try it, they see it sucks, and they go away. Help me help you understand why this game is beautiful, what is hiding underneath, and why I think this is something that most of the role-playing tables that have played, for example, Call of Cthulhu or some other dark stuff, can indulge in. And one more thing, I'm not much for safety tools. We don't use them. I don't use them with groups I know. I don't use them with groups I don't know. You can love me or you can hate me. I don't care about safety tools. I like playing games with people that are adults, and yeah, there are sensitive topics in this world, and as long as you're at least somewhat reasonable as a DM, you shouldn't be like triggering anyone. But for KULT, I would advise reading through what their horror contract is, because this is somewhat pushing the boundaries. You as a DM have such a toolbox that you can create really gruesome things. This is something that you should be considering. Safety tools in this game are good, but I wouldn't use, for example, X cards that pop up in the middle of the game. I would maybe try to do it the horror contract way, where you go and talk to your players about the themes, and then you see if someone has a trigger around those themes, so you can circumvent them completely or replace them with some other theme. You can probably gruesome stuff A goes out, gruesome stuff B goes in. You can like just Lego that stuff. So I guess a bunch of people are here just waiting, like, come on, just tell us what the game is and who is it for. Well, let's start with the premise. The premise is that every human being was a divine being, and we had our like slaves and the lesser beings that we created for them to serve us. Then an evil entity, bigger god thing called the Demiurge appeared and has constructed like a matrix type of prison for humans called the Elysium. The Demiurge imprisons humans, and there are aspects of the Demiurge called Archons, and Archons are basically in a structure that is similar to Kabbalah. And yeah, as I said, this goes very deep into that stuff. So each of the Archons is representing one of the concepts that is used to imprison people. For example, you have the Archon of hierarchy, of bureaucracy. I will put some examples on the screen because I'm just talking from my head, so I can't remember everything. They are maintaining this big machinery that is incomprehensible to man, that basically keeps the Elysium going. And around the Elysium you have the Gaia, which is like a primal nature type of place from which Elysium is created, and then the machinery and where the place where people lived during their divine regime is called the Metropolis, the city laying on 7,777 hills. And the Demiurge is conquering the Metropolis, is creating the Archons, and they are trying to create more and more intricate like designs that will make humans forget that they were divine. The Demiurge has his darker shadow type of brother thing, which is the ruler of the underworld, or it is here called Inferno, which is basically hell. And then in hell you have the fallen angels, dark angels, something like that, and they are kind of like dark manifestations of the Archons. They are like tied to the deadly sins and all that stuff. Now all of these entities, it's good, it's fine, they are all scared that people will become free, and they have their manifestation in Elysium. So we here are living in the Elysium, and we cannot see what is happening outside. And millennia have passed, and the Archons and the Demiurge are falling apart. The Demiurge actually disappears, and only the Archons are left, not knowing what to do, and they're falling apart. Metropolis is falling apart. Gaia is falling apart. Inferno is like hell, so it's always falling apart. And all of these things living there are actually like feeding off of human suffering. It's important to mention that these beings, they cannot enter Elysium. Not always, not all of them. And they cannot see into the Elysium. So they have to have some like agents that are going to go and explore what people are doing. They have to maintain the machinery. And when there is potent emotion, especially bad ones, somewhere in Elysium, it thins the veil between the realities between Elysium and the outside. And whenever that happens, sometimes your sanity or your insanity, you losing your mind, you confronting some horrible things, your pain and suffering is warping the space around you, and that is what causes the wall to be very thin. At this point, the entities from outside Elysium notice you, and you can get like in some very interesting philosophical interactions with them. For example, if you do something horrible or you have been through a lot of pain, you kind of get your own purgatide, that is a being that is feeding off of your pain, and it wants to pull you into its purgatory. Each of the people that is captured by purgatides gets their own like purgatory in hell, which is like constant torture, just custom made for you only today. Yeah, these kinds of things. There is a full like bestiary and encyclopedia of monsters, beings, philosophical concepts in this book. It is vast, it is beautiful, and it's one of the prettiest books that I own. So I can feel I'm not giving it justice still. Like, this premise is not the meat of the matter. The vibe is, the presentation. I will, at the end of this video, I will provide a read through the first paragraph of the book, and you will figure out what that vibe is. But for now, it is, in my opinion, it is not a dark book. I mean, it is a dark book, but it's something that is so dark and so full of like disgusting descriptions and like psychological torture of the characters, and everyone focuses on this, that we do not see the beautiful part of the book, that single strand of hope that is going through everything, where it is even tied to the progression. You were the divine, you will become divine again. It is the matter of time, not if but when. Maybe 2 millennia, 3 millennia, you will be stuck in this simulation, but eventually the Archons and everything that is trying to keep the simulation running, they don't know how to do it. They're failing at it. They're eating at each other. They're at war. They are not united against humanity. They are cooperating because they have to. All through the book, you have this strand of hope that is going through everything. And the vibe while you are reading this book, play the songs from, I think it's called Kilimanjaro Dark Jazz Ensemble, something like that. Play their music and read the book. Ooh, it gives you this nostalgic liminal horror effect where it is the man on the sidewalk talking to himself. It is the liminality of the motels that are in the middle of nowhere with like that moist smell of almost rotting carpets. It is the subway at 2 a.m., the mystery, the tension that you're being watched. It is when you see a shrine on the street, something that looks like garbage, but it's almost arranged in a meaningful way, and you're like, is this some like black magic voodoo stuff or like whatever? I'm not superstitious. Well, in this world, in the subway, someone is watching you. There's motel walls there, they have seen things, the carpet is drenched in blood. The homeless guy talking to himself is actually talking to a being just outside the Elysium. Maybe his loved one. Maybe their loved one is on the other side, mutilated and distorted. And knows that he is awakened, shunned by the society, but he has been awakened. He sees through the veil, but it just makes him seem that much more insane for it. And that's why he's homeless. These beings, they will do anything they can to put their boot onto us, to get us shunned from society. Those who get awakened will be stopped from awakening, but will they? And that is that nihilistic landscape contrast like between the otherworldly and the mundane in the same scene. You want the feeling of unease, of darkness, but still nostalgic hope. And I want to mention like the progression system. You start as an archetype of a sleeper, which means your character is not aware that something otherworldly is happening around the world. And as you play your character, you get some advantages and you're becoming awake. So you now have more chance to slip from the illusion and go into the metropolis or some other like horror landscape and encounter beings and all that. But you're getting used to it. You're getting some advantages yourself. You're getting disadvantages in dark stuff also. Of course, you have the spiral, but the game itself is trying to tell you you will go mad going awake, and at the end of the hardest madness lies divinity. It is very interesting to me. And I want to say that in terms of like a horror, we have I would say two types of ways that I would run horror, especially this type of horror, that I think is very important, and that is the concept of closure. When you play the modules from KULT, you will bring out topics that are hard and dark. You will talk about someone getting a terminal disease of your players. You will say that someone is getting an abortion. You will say that they are like getting their legs broken or like spine fractured, hemorrhages, eyeballs popping. You will be disgusting. And all of that will bring some amount of tension into your players. I had a situation where the girlfriend of a missing man that just went on a sexual, like masochistic frenzy, whatever, she was actually assaulted by him at some point. And now she was like, hey, and this was not in the scenario, but she was like, hey, I want to go and get tested for AIDS. And I said, okay, go, we will roll a die. And she turned out to be positive. And I described it as you hear the doctor's voice, but it's like it's getting like inaudible, almost like you're in a well. You just hear as you are looking at the results, and they say like positive. And this had an impact on her. I mean, the girl playing the girlfriend was actually my fiance. And I have kind of briefed her that it is going to be like that. I mean, that is not spoil it for her, but say that it is going to be dark. She felt it. It really like stuck with her. And when we talked at the end, her only gripe with all of this was that there was no closure at the end for her character. And I would say that even if your character lives in a dark world and bad stuff happens to them and they are trying to like figure out things, and they can find themselves in a situation where they know that the world is broken, they know that there are forces bigger than us, but they also become okay with it. I would say that as a DM, you should create stories for KULT that at the end give the players the choice to feel okay with stuff. Not to give up. It's not giving up. It's having like, it's saying I'm fine. I have some people that I love and I'm fine with just living this life to the end. That's one way that you can end someone's arc in KULT. And you have close relations. That is one of the mechanics, like close relations, people close to you, and it can bring up your stability or bring it down depending on what happens to them. The second thing is when your players are playing horrible people, and sometimes you have this. We had in Oakwood Heights, there is a psychologist. Spoiler alert. Yes, we need to do that. Spoiler alert for the best one shot for KULT that exists. So 3, 2, 1, everyone gone? Okay. Oakwood Heights is, you're basically exploring a mind of a serial killer and you're not trying to catch him. He's already caught, he's already had a trial, you're trying to extract information about where he hid the body of a boy. And one of the player characters is a psychologist with God complex, and he is actually making his clients unalive themselves. This player roleplayed this excellently, and at the end he was ready if the demons and everything would to capture his character and bring him to like the purgatory or whatever, he would still be fine with it because he was playing a horrible guy and he was trying to like roleplay it really good. But at the end, if that horrible guy was caught, the player and not the character is getting closure. And that's the point. You're not aiming at closure for characters, you're aiming at the closure for players. So if the player feels fine and it makes sense for them and it's a dramatic thing, you can torture their character and they will feel like the character deserved it. In a nutshell, I say you have two types of horror paths. One is get the players to their deepest and hardest point and then demolish them. And in some cases that can still bring closure to the players. And also the other path is where you get through a bunch of nasty things, but you come out not victorious, but ready to just be okay with it. You're just too tired. You can't fight anymore. And you succumb back to the illusion of Elysium. So now I want to talk about how I use this setting, and we'll come and talk about like the things in the system, like mechanic wise, right after this. The setting has a lot of material. You have a lot of really gruesome descriptions. You have a lot of symbols for Archons and the Dark Angels and all that. Look at those symbols, spread them out through the world where you think they would be interesting. For example, I think like there is a cup with like menstrual blood and a ear of a man inside of it, placed like right next to the stairs of the subway, and someone might notice that and be like, oh, what is this? But actually that's a shrine for a certain type of deity, the Archon of a certain type. And there is a hierarchy. Each Archon has its like beings that are following it, and its own angel, and dark angels have their own fallen angels and the cleriges, and I have no idea. It's too complicated. I didn't memorize everything. But pick and choose. You have so much material. You even have like interesting ideas, like these beings that can cross into Elysium. They are not able to be perceived by people as strange. So you're perceiving them as normal people, for example. So you would see like a normal height guy, maybe strange looking, maybe he's like jittery or something, and he's going through the doorway and you just hear him duck. Even though the doorway is very high and he has a lot of space in between him and the ceiling, but he's like ducking down because in reality he is quite big. And also, of course, there is body horror. There are hooks in those people and like piercings and like some skin removed. When you go into the Metropolis or Inferno, you see this mutilated stuff, but in Elysium, you don't see this. So when do you perceive these things? You will, in some cases, have players find a place where the veil is thin. And first thing that will happen is, especially if they are like sleepers, you get them into, you divide them, you divide the party. Each of them has like a vision. They go into tight spaces. You see like a tight space and you see a kid run through those pipes or something. You start to follow it and then you get stuck. You try to go like back, and when you plop out the way you came in, you're not in the same place. You're now in a different place. And you're little and you see your ma and she's like holding your hand, and then you see the slow motion of a bullet piercing her head. For example, like give them illusions that are based on like full-blown, not illusions, full-blown trips. The dark horror psychedelic trips that are inspired by their disadvantages and their dark secrets. And this is the thing, each of the characters will have their dark secret, and you use these dark secrets for these types of illusions. Now, the vision that I mentioned right now, I would say that's the level 2 escalation. Level 1 is you just see random stuff, like your mother's favorite cigarettes are on your couch. You haven't had anyone over that smokes these types of cigarettes. This package is not even produced for the last 30 years and you don't smoke. So, interesting. In the psychologist example from the Oakwood Heights, we had messages from his patients that are not alive anymore come to his phone. When he calls, no one answers, that the number is discontinued. This is the level 1, I would say, escalation. The level 2 is full-blown visions, not all the time. Just ramp up, give a vision. And as soon as the vision starts, cut to the other player. And you leave them in this limbo, like what is happening. And then when you come back, you just give them just a tiny bit of vision, and then you get them out of the vision. So you're just teasing, edging them, giving them like this. When things escalate even more, you get them into like full-blown trips, visions where the doors are not leading to the same places. Each staircase going up, but you end up down. You go through a door and suddenly you're in Metropolis. You start ramping up like all the crazy horror stuff. That think about like Clive Barker, Hellraiser, and like his literature in general, like the shifting and bending of the space and time in general. You would do that and then bring the players together. The moment where they figure out that illusion can hurt them and that they are all seeing it. In the escalation level 2, I usually don't make them all see it. Someone is seeing something, someone is not. And allow yourself to go beyond the boundaries that you would do with, for example, Call of Cthulhu or other games. I know I'm beating around the bush a bit, but like, yeah, it's YouTube, so read the book and you will find some really juicy things. Another thing is Metropolis is amazing thematically, and there are some official soundtracks I think for it. It's an amazing landscape. Inferno, not my cup of tea. It's just hell. We have seen 20,000 renditions of hell. But Metropolis is pretty cool. And my tip would be for you to always have something ready for Metropolis. Because at some point, players will pass over, someone will go through the veil, and you would want to have something interesting happen there. Not just roam the empty city that is incomprehensible to the human mind. So let's talk about a couple of mechanics. And so first of all, this is a system powered by the apocalypse, and it is a bit modified in a sense. The character sheets are very simple. I will put it somewhere here, and you have the GM reference. That is all you need. The idea here is that you as a GM are not making any rolls. Anything that you have to roll for as a GM is automatic success. You cannot do what you want when you want as a GM. You have what is called your moves, and players have their moves. So for example, persuading someone to do something is a player move. If they fail, and you're rolling 2d10 and adding the numbers, and everything below 9 is a total failure, a fumble. 10 to 15 is failure with complications, and over that is a success. So if you get complications or you get a fumble, DM might get a move. And for a DM, a move is like create a new threat, make them drop something, make a spooky scene, or like make them have one hallucination. You have a list of your DM moves, and some of the scenarios come with their own moves. So you get this list and you're like literally like ticking when you got a move and then using some of those from the list. If you don't use your move right away, you can use it afterwards, and that is called a hold. Honestly, it's a good thing for new DMs. For example, it's pretty easy. The game is literally telling you when to do things as a DM, like when is the good time to do something pacing-wise. So the game will handle a bunch of pacing, and your characters will have dark secrets, which is literally a dark secret. For example, the psychologist I mentioned killing patients, that is a dark secret. There was a cop that hit a girl with his car, that is a dark secret, and he ran away, that is why it's a dark secret. There is then disadvantages, which is like you're being stalked, you're being paranoid, you're addicted. You as a DM, you can activate them when you have a move, and maybe someone is stalking you. There is an interesting story where I think Seth Skorkowsky talked about this, where one of the private investigators, he was tasked with going to research a building from a girl that has a picture of a building, and she said, I know this building exists, I have a picture of it, but no one else believes me. So he goes and investigates and finds the building, takes a bunch of pictures of the building. The building is like almost uncanny inside. It's abandoned, but it's furnished. It's very strange. And it looks a bit older than other buildings around it. So he goes out and he looks at the photos when he gets the photos to the girl, but there is no building on the photos. All the photos that were from inside of the building are like empty, and now something has noticed that he has been peeking behind the veil, so now he's being hunted. And this would be, for example, a disadvantage, him being hunted because he accidentally perceived something that was not perceivable. So you can go pretty wild with this, and of course players can get rid of disadvantages and get new ones and get phobias and stuff. A lot of material to dig your teeth in, and these moves and holds are kind of like giving you a system to manage that without having to really like torture your brain that much. Another thing that is very interesting is they provide the concept of intrigue maps. And there are online tools for making these intrigue maps, which is even cooler. And they create relations between your players, NPCs, dark secrets, advantages, disadvantages, like beings that are hunting them, organizations. It creates an intrigue map, and you can always reference this and see how maybe your visions or your like uncanny events can be like, I call it surfing through this intrigue map, where something that this player experiences can have an effect on what some other player experiences, or like make a snowball effect of like hysteria or something. So I don't know if someone is interested in actually me making videos about KULT, like breaking down rules and all the advantages, disadvantages, going into intrigue maps. I would certainly do a full video on that. So yeah, you can pretty much give me any recommendations and I will see what I can do. This video is actually a keeper suggestion as well. He asked me who is KULT for, so I went on a tangent talking about everything except who is this for. Okay, so my conclusion here is that this is a deep game. You will certainly leave the table with a certain sour taste in your mouth. You will not leave it like full of energy, excited. You will leave it like after watching a very deep and emotional movie. And this is what this game should be. It should be emotional. You should go through traumatic events. And as long as you find content at the end, it's fine. It will leave your table with something to think about for weeks. Even like small things, the details, the smells, it's so much more potent here because KULT is mostly in the modern age, and you can very much relate to these people, and they have real problems from the real world. It's not always some otherworldly thing, like the AIDS story. It's real. It exists, it's here. Someone is in this moment having those bad things happen to them. So be ready to like wreck your players and wreck your mind while you're prepping this, and try to make it in a way meaningful. I have a feeling that all of the one-shots that we found so far online, they're not meaningful in the end. It's something that you don't have the privilege of feeling and experiencing all the time. You can certainly use this and have a great game. Giving hope, like focusing on that hope, focusing on what's right with the humanity and their divine aspects. That's what I think will bring up the game. The players should leave not thinking it was unfair beating of their psyche. They should leave thinking, wow, this was a bloody good story. And I feel okay with it. I have not given it justice, but what I can try to do is try to read the first couple of sentences from the book, and I think it will set the stage for what to expect.
We live in a world where the sun has set. Forsaken creatures roam deserted streets in crumbling cities. Fallen angels, mourning their creator, seek shelter in abandoned cathedrals of steel and rust. Behind silent facades of skyscrapers, people in designer clothes strap their victims to the cold autopsy tables. Forbidden rituals are woven with human blood and terror. Mangled bodies are taken away in plastic bags to disappear forever. Secret words are spoken by death magicians over cheap bourbon in rundown bars. In abandoned buildings, children of the night, they sell demons in bottles. Forgotten gods are revived by the neon light and the street noise. They tend their dance of death in trendy clubs. Every crossing, every rickety staircase or doorway may lead us to unknown worlds. And we are imprisoned in the borderlands between darkness and madness, and dreams and death. A veil has been placed over our eyes, masking the truth and keeping our divine souls asleep. In the labyrinth of the city, the prophets of our age begin their journey towards awakening. We live in a world where the sun has set, where our divinity is lost, where death is only the beginning.